She walked into the desert to die, but the bundle of rags crying in the sand would change everything. Magnolia Pierce dragged her feet through the burning sand, each step heavier than the last. The sun beat down mercilessly on her torn dress, but she felt nothing. The pain inside had numbed everything else. She had chosen this place deliberately, far from town, far from the whispers, far from the empty house that still smelled like her baby boy. The desert would claim her just like it had claimed so many others. No one would find her here. No one would mourn her. But as she stumbled forward, something impossible caught her eye. A sound that shouldn't exist in this wasteland of silence. Crying. Soft, desperate crying that cut through the wind like a knife. 20 yards ahead, beneath the shade of a dying mesquite tree, lay a bundle wrapped in dirty cloth. The crying grew louder as she approached, and her heart, the heart she thought had died 3 months ago, began to race. She knelt beside the bundle with trembling hands. Inside the filthy rags was a baby, no more than a few weeks old. A girl, with dark hair matted against her tiny skull, and lips cracked from thirst. The child's eyes were barely open, but she was alive. Barely, but alive. Magnolia's hand shook as she lifted the baby. The little one weighed almost nothing, her skin hot with fever. Someone had left her here to die, just as Magnolia had come here for the same purpose. But holding this fragile life against her chest, awakened something she thought was buried forever. The baby's crying grew weaker, more desperate. Magnolia looked around frantically. No water. No shade except this pitiful tree. No sign of whoever had abandoned this child in the middle of nowhere. She had walked into the desert with nothing. No water, no food, no hope. She had planned to lie down under the sun and let the heat take her away from the pain. But now, with this baby in her arms, everything changed. The child needed water. She needed shelter. She needed someone to fight for her life when she couldn't fight for herself. And despite everything, despite the crushing weight of her own grief, Magnolia found herself standing up. She had to make a choice. She could lay the baby down gently and continue with her original plan, or she could turn around and try to save them both. But the nearest water was miles away, and she had no supplies, no strength left. The baby's breathing grew shallow. Time was running out. And as Magnolia looked into those tiny, trusting eyes, she realized that someone else's desperate decision had just saved her life. But they weren't safe yet, not even close, because the desert that had nearly claimed them both was about to reveal its deadliest secret. Magnolia clutched the baby against her chest and started walking back toward town. But she had been walking for hours before finding the child, and now the sun was directly overhead, turning the desert into an oven. Each step felt like walking through fire. The baby had stopped crying. That terrified her more than the screaming had. Silence meant the child was getting weaker, using less energy because she had less to give. Magnolia tried to shield the tiny body with her own shadow, but there was no real protection from the heat. Her lips were already cracked and bleeding. Her tongue felt like leather in her mouth. She had been so consumed by grief that she hadn't eaten properly in days. And now her body was betraying her when she needed it most. But something kept her moving. Maybe it was the weight of the baby in her arms. Maybe it was the memory of her own child, lost to fever just 3 months ago. Or maybe it was the simple fact that someone had to fight for this innocent life. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction. Nothing but sand, scrub brush, and the occasional skeleton of a dead animal. She tried to remember the way back, but everything looked the same. The sun was disorienting her, making her dizzy and confused. Then she heard something that made her blood freeze. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses moving fast across the sand. She turned and saw them in the distance, 3 riders approaching at a gallop. At first, relief flooded through her. Help, water, a chance for the baby to survive. But as they drew closer, she noticed something wrong. These weren't rescuers. The men rode hard and low, their faces covered with bandanas. They moved like predators who had spotted prey. Magnolia's instincts screamed danger. She looked around desperately for somewhere to hide, but the desert offered no cover. The mesquite tree was too far behind, and ahead was nothing but open ground. The riders split up as they approached, flanking her on both sides. Their leader, a tall man with cold eyes above his bandana, pulled up in front of her. His horse snorted and stamped, sensing the tension. The man's gaze moved from Magnolia to the bundle in her arms, and something predatory flickered in his expression. He dismounted slowly, deliberately, never taking his eyes off her. She backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The other two riders had positioned themselves to cut off any escape route. The baby stirred weakly in her arms, and Magnolia realized with growing horror that these men weren't interested in helping. They were interested in taking. The leader stepped closer, and when he spoke, his voice was rough as sandpaper. But what he said next would force Magnolia to make an impossible choice between her own life and the child she barely knew. "Well, well," the leader said, pulling down his bandana to reveal a scarred face and yellow teeth. "What do we have here? A woman and a baby all alone in the desert." Magnolia held the child tighter, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The baby was burning with fever, her tiny body limp and unresponsive. Every second they delayed was another second closer to losing her. "Please," Magnolia whispered, her voice cracking. "The baby needs water. She's dying." The man laughed, a sound like grinding glass. "Dying, you say? Well, that's unfortunate." He stepped closer, and she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "But I'm more interested in what a fine-looking woman like you is doing out here with someone else's kid." One of the other riders, a younger man with nervous eyes, shifted in his saddle. "Boss, maybe we should—" "Shut up, Tommy," the leader snapped. His cold gaze returned to Magnolia. "You see, we've been tracking someone. A woman who took something valuable from our employer. Someone matching your description." Magnolia's mind raced. She had never seen these men before, but clearly they had mistaken her for someone else. Someone who had stolen something important enough to chase into the desert. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, backing away slowly. "I found this baby abandoned. I'm trying to save her." The leader's hand moved to the gun on his hip. "That's a real touching story. But here's the thing. Our employer is missing both his wife and his newborn daughter. Seems like quite a coincidence, don't you think?" The pieces fell into place like a nightmare puzzle. The baby in her arms wasn't just abandoned, she was stolen. Someone had taken this child from her father and left her in the desert to die. And now these men thought Magnolia was the kidnapper. "I'm not who you think I am," she said desperately. "I came here to—" She stopped herself. How could she explain that she had come here to die? That finding this baby had saved her life just as much as she was trying to save the child's? The younger rider, Tommy, leaned forward. "Boss, look at her. She's half dead herself. And that baby, she needs help." But the leader wasn't listening. His eyes had hardened with certainty. "The real question is, where's the money? Our employer says his wife took a considerable sum when she ran off with his daughter." Magnolia realized with growing horror that these men would never believe her story. They had been hunting someone, and she fit the description well enough. In their minds, she was guilty. The baby's breathing grew even more shallow. Her lips were turning blue. Time was running out, and these men were wasting precious minutes with their accusations. "Listen to me," Magnolia said, desperation making her voice stronger. "I don't have any money. I don't know anything about a wife or a theft. But this baby is dying. Whatever happened before, she's innocent." The leader drew his gun, the metal gleaming in the harsh sunlight. "Then you won't mind if we search you, and if we don't find what we're looking for." His threat hung in the air like the desert heat. But as he stepped forward, something unexpected happened that would change everything. Because the real kidnapper was closer than anyone imagined. A gunshot cracked across the desert, and the leader spun around as a bullet kicked up sand near his horse's feet. All three men drew their weapons, scanning the horizon for the shooter. From behind a cluster of rocks 50 yards away, a woman emerged with a rifle trained on them. She was younger than Magnolia, maybe 25, with dark hair tangled by the wind and a dress that had once been fine, but was now torn and dirty. "Step away from her," the woman called out, her voice steady despite the distance. "That's my daughter she's holding." The leader's face twisted into a grin. "Well, well, Rosalie Thorne, we've been looking all over creation for you." So this was the real kidnapper, the woman who had stolen the baby and left her in the desert. But why? And why was she now pointing a gun at the men who worked for her husband? Rosalie kept the rifle steady as she walked closer. "I said step away from her. My daughter needs help." "Your daughter?" The leader laughed harshly. "You mean the daughter you stole from her father? The daughter you left to die in the desert while you ran off with his money?" "I didn't steal her." Rosalie's voice cracked with emotion. "She's my baby, and I didn't leave her to die. I hid her." Magnolia looked down at the tiny, fevered face in her arms. The baby's breathing was so shallow now that she had to put her ear close to the child's mouth to hear it. Whatever was happening between these people, the baby was running out of time. "She needs water," Magnolia called out to Rosalie. "Right now, or she won't make it." Rosalie's composure broke. Tears streamed down her face as she took in the baby's condition. Is she alive?" "Barely," Magnolia said. "But we can save her if we stop this madness and get her help." The leader raised his gun toward Rosalie. "Enough talking. Where's the money, woman? Mr. Thorne wants his property back, all of it." "Property?" Rosalie's voice turned to steel. "That baby is not property, and neither am I." She shifted her aim directly at the leader's chest. "My husband sold me like cattle to pay his debts. He said he'd sell our daughter too when she was old enough. I took what gold I could carry and ran." The pieces of the puzzle fell into place. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. This was a desperate mother trying to save her child from being sold. But something had gone wrong, and she had hidden the baby in the desert. Tommy, the younger rider, lowered his gun slightly. "Boss, maybe we should—" "I said shut up," the leader snarled. But his certainty was wavering. The story was more complicated than he had expected. Magnolia felt the baby's breathing grow even weaker. "Please," she begged. "Whatever happened between you people, this baby is innocent. She's dying while we stand here arguing." Rosalie's rifle began to shake in her hands. "I hid her under the tree with water and food. I was supposed to come back for her after I led you away. But you found me too quickly, and I got lost trying to circle back. I've been searching for her for 2 days." The leader's gun never wavered. "Touching story. But Mr. Thorne still wants his wife and daughter back. And he wants his gold. If you were Magnolia, what would you do? Try to run with the dying baby and hope to escape in the crossfire, or step between the guns and force them to focus on saving the child's life first? Tell me in the comments. I need to know which side you'd choose, because what happened next would determine whether any of them lived to see sunset." The standoff stretched like a taut wire. 3 guns pointed in different directions while a baby's life hung in the balance. But the desert had one more deadly surprise waiting for them all. Magnolia made her choice. She stepped directly between the guns, holding the dying baby up where everyone could see her. "Look at her!" she shouted. "Look at this child!" The baby's lips were blue now, her tiny chest barely rising and falling. Her skin felt like paper, hot and dry as the desert wind. "This is somebody's daughter," Magnolia continued, her voice breaking. "I don't care about your gold or your marriage or your revenge. This baby is going to die in the next hour if we don't do something right now." For a moment, the only sound was the wind whistling through the scrub brush. Then Tommy, the young rider, holstered his gun and pulled a water flask from his saddle. "She's right," he said, walking toward Magnolia. "Whatever else is happening here, we can't let a baby die." The leader swung his gun toward Tommy. "Get back on that horse, boy." But Tommy kept walking. "No, sir. I signed up to track down a thief, not to watch a child die of thirst." He handed the flask to Magnolia. "Give her small sips. Too much too fast will make her sick." Magnolia's hands shook as she tilted the flask to the baby's cracked lips. A few drops of water trickled into the tiny mouth and the child stirred weakly. It was the first sign of life she had shown in an hour. Rosalie lowered her rifle slightly. Will she be okay?" "I don't know," Magnolia said honestly. "She needs more than water. She needs shelter, food, proper care. And she needs it somewhere that isn't the middle of the desert." The leader kept his gun trained on Rosalie, but his resolve was cracking. Even he could see that the baby was in real danger. "Fine. We'll take the child back to town. But you're still coming with us, Rosalie. Mr. Thorne wants his wife back." "No." Rosalie's voice was firm. "I won't go back to that man. He'll sell our daughter to the highest bidder just like he tried to sell me." "That's not your choice to make," the leader said. "You're still his legal wife." Tommy stepped closer to Magnolia, helping her give the baby more water. "Boss, what if there's another way? What if we just take the baby back and leave the woman here? Mr. Thorne wants them both." Rosalie raised her rifle again. "Then Mr. Thorne is going to be disappointed. I'd rather die in this desert than go back to that life." The baby coughed weakly and opened her eyes for the first time since Magnolia had found her. Those tiny dark eyes looked up at Magnolia with complete trust, and something broke open in her chest. This child needed a protector, someone who would fight for her no matter what. "There's another option," Magnolia said quietly. "What if the baby comes with me?" Everyone stared at her. The leader laughed harshly. "You? You're nobody. You were wandering the desert half dead yourself. Maybe, Magnolia said, standing straighter. But I'm someone who would die before I'd let harm come to this child. And right now, that's more than any of you can say. The standoff took on a new tension, because as the baby grew stronger in Magnolia's arms, it became clear that she wasn't just holding the child anymore. She was claiming her. If you're enjoying the story, subscribe to the channel. But the leader had one more card to play, and when he revealed it, everything they thought they knew about the situation would explode into chaos. The leader's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. You want to know the truth about this touching little family? He gestured toward Rosalie with his gun. Tell them, woman. Tell them what you really did. Rosalie's face went pale, but she kept her rifle steady. I don't know what you mean. Don't you? Then maybe you forgot about the other baby. The one you killed. The words hit like a physical blow. Magnolia felt her knees go weak, but she held the baby tighter. What is he talking about? The leader grinned, enjoying the shock on their faces. Mr. Thorne had twins, 2 daughters. This one, he pointed at the baby in Magnolia's arms, and her sister. But when dear Rosalie decided to run away, she could only carry 1 child. That's not true, Rosalie whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Tell them about the other baby, Rosalie. Tell them how you left her sister behind in that house. Tell them how the house caught fire with the baby still inside. Magnolia's world tilted. The baby in her arms suddenly felt heavier, as if she was carrying the weight of a tragedy too horrible to comprehend. You left her sister to die? Rosalie's rifle began to shake violently. I couldn't carry them both. The house was already burning when I got there. One of Thorne's creditors had set it on fire to send a message. I could only save one. So you chose, the leader said with cruel satisfaction. You chose this one and left the other to burn. What kind of mother does that make you? Tommy stared at Rosalie in horror. Is it true? Rosalie's composure finally shattered. She dropped the rifle and fell to her knees in the sand, sobbing. I tried to go back. I tried to save them both. But the fire spread so fast and I could hear men shouting outside. If I had stayed, we all would have died. Magnolia looked down at the baby in her arms. This child was a survivor, but her survival had come at the cost of her sister's life. The weight of that knowledge settled on Magnolia's shoulders like a stone. Mr. Thorne wants justice, the leader continued. He wants his surviving daughter back, and he wants his wife to face what she's done. Justice? Magnolia's voice was barely a whisper. What justice is there in punishing this baby for her mother's impossible choice? But even as she spoke, she understood why the leader was so confident. Rosalie had made a decision that no mother should ever have to make, and the guilt was destroying her. She wouldn't fight much longer. The baby stirred in Magnolia's arms, making soft sounds as the water began to revive her. Those innocent eyes looked up at Magnolia again, trusting and helpless. This child had no idea that her existence was built on tragedy. Tommy picked up Rosalie's fallen rifle. Boss, maybe we should think about this. The woman's been through enough. The woman's been through enough? The leader's voice rose. What about Mr. Thorne? What about his other daughter? The one who died screaming in the fire? The desert heat pressed down on them all, but the tension was colder than winter. Magnolia realized that this wasn't just about returning stolen property anymore. This was about punishment, about making someone pay for a tragedy that had no winners. She looked at Rosalie, broken and sobbing in the sand. Then she looked at the baby, finally alert and responsive in her arms, and she made a decision that would change all their lives. Take me instead, she said quietly. The leader stopped talking. Everyone stared at her. Take me back to this Mr. Thorne, Magnolia continued. Tell him I'm the one who kidnapped his daughter. Let Rosalie disappear into the desert. She suffered enough. But her offer would unleash consequences none of them saw coming, because Mr. Thorne's true plans for his daughter were darker than anyone imagined. The leader laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think Mr. Thorne cares about justice? You think he wants his daughter back out of love? Tommy looked confused. What do you mean, boss? Tell them, Rosalie, the leader taunted. Tell them why your husband is so eager to get his daughter back. Tell them about the buyer. Rosalie's sobs grew louder. No, please no. Magnolia's blood ran cold. What buyer? The leader holstered his gun, confident now that he held all the cards. Mr. Thorne owes serious money to serious people, the kind of people who collect debts in blood if they don't get paid. But he found a solution. A wealthy man back east who pays top dollar for young acquisitions. The words hit Magnolia like a physical blow. She clutched the baby closer, understanding flooding through her like ice water. He's selling his own daughter. Not selling, the leader corrected with mock civility. Arranging an adoption. Very lucrative adoption. The buyer specifically wanted a baby girl, and he's willing to pay enough to cover all of Thorne's debts and leave him comfortable for life. Tommy dropped his reins. Boss, that's not right. A man doesn't sell his own child. A desperate man does whatever it takes to survive, the leader replied. And Mr. Thorne is very desperate. Rosalie struggled to her feet, tears streaming down her face. That's why I ran. That's why I took the gold and tried to disappear with both my daughters. I heard him making the arrangements. I heard him describing them like they were livestock. Magnolia looked down at the baby in her arms. The child was alert now, looking around with curious eyes, unaware that she was the center of a bidding war for her life. And now you want to take her back to him. It's not my job to judge Mr. Thorne's business decisions, the leader said. I'm paid to return his property. Property. Magnolia's voice turned to steel. This baby is not property. According to the law, she belongs to her father, and her father wants her back. The leader gestured to his men. Tommy, get some rope. We're taking all three of them back to town. But Tommy didn't move. His face had gone pale as he stared at the baby. I can't do this, boss. I won't be part of selling a child. You'll do what you're paid to do, or you'll walk back to town on foot. Tommy slowly shook his head. Then I guess I'm walking. The leader's hand moved back to his gun. No, boy. You're not walking anywhere. The tension crackled like lightning before a storm. Rosalie was broken, Tommy was rebelling, and Magnolia was holding a baby that multiple people wanted to claim for very different reasons. But as the leader prepared to enforce his authority with violence, Magnolia realized something that changed everything. In all the arguing and threatening, no one had asked the most important question: what was best for the baby? And for the first time since finding the child, Magnolia knew exactly what she had to do. The desert wind picked up, swirling sand around them like a warning, because Magnolia's next decision would either save them all or destroy everything they had fought for. Magnolia stood up slowly, the baby secure in her arms. None of you are taking this child anywhere. The leader's gun swung toward her, swung. Lady, you're in no position to make demands. Maybe not, Magnolia said, her voice steady for the first time since this nightmare began. But I'm in a position to make a choice, and I choose this baby's life over all of your plans. She looked at each of them in turn. Rosalie, you made an impossible decision in an impossible situation. You saved one daughter's life, even though it cost you the other. That takes courage, not blame. Rosalie looked up, hope flickering in her tear-stained eyes. Tommy, Magnolia continued, you chose to stand up for what's right, even when it cost you everything. That takes honor. Tommy straightened his shoulders, his decision made. And you, she turned to the leader. You're so focused on following orders that you forgot to think about what's right. This baby deserves better than being sold like cattle. The leader's face darkened. Enough talking. Hand over the child. No. The single word hung in the desert air like a challenge. Magnolia took a step back, shielding the baby with her body. I walked into this desert to die, she said quietly. I lost my own child 3 months ago, and I thought my life was over. But this baby, she saved me just as much as I saved her, and I won't let anyone use her as payment for a debt or an adoption fee. The leader raised his gun. Last chance, lady. But before he could pull the trigger, Tommy tackled him from behind. The two men went down hard, wrestling in the sand as the gun flew out of reach. Rosalie scrambled for her fallen rifle. Run! She shouted to Magnolia. Take her and run! But Magnolia didn't run. Instead, she walked calmly to where the leader's gun had landed and picked it up. The weight felt foreign in her hands, but her grip was steady. The leader threw Tommy off and lunged for the weapon, but stopped short when he found himself staring down the barrel. Here's what's going to happen, Magnolia said, her voice calm as still water. Rosalie is going to take one of your horses and ride away. She's going to disappear into the desert and never look back. You're going to let her go. Like hell I am, the leader snarled. Yes, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to put a bullet in you and leave you for the vultures. And I promise you, after what I've been through, I have nothing left to lose. Tommy got to his feet, brushing sand from his clothes. Ma'am, what about the baby? Magnolia looked down at the child in her arms. The baby was fully awake now, looking up at her with those trusting dark eyes. She's coming with me. I'm going to raise her as my own daughter. Give her the life she deserves. You can't just steal someone's child, the leader said. But his voice lacked its earlier conviction. I'm not stealing her, Magnolia replied. I'm saving her. From a father who would sell her. From a system that treats children like property. From people who care more about money than innocent lives. The baby made a soft cooing sound, and Magnolia felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Pure, clean hope for the future. Rosalie mounted one of the horses, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Take care of my daughter. Love her enough for both of us. As Rosalie rode away into the desert, disappearing into the heat shimmer, Magnolia knew she had found her purpose again. This baby had saved her from despair, and now she would spend her life returning that gift. The leader watched his mission crumble, but he was smart enough to know when he was beaten. Tommy helped him to his feet, and they mounted their remaining horses. This isn't over, the leader warned as they prepared to leave. Yes, it is, Magnolia said firmly. It's over because I'm making it over. As the men rode away, Magnolia stood alone in the desert with the baby who had changed everything. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. She looked down at the child in her arms. Well, little one, I suppose we should give you a name. How about Hope? Because that's what you gave me when I thought I had none left. The baby gurgled softly, as if she approved. If you're enjoying the story, subscribe to the channel. Magnolia Pierce walked out of that desert a different woman than the one who had entered it. She had gone there to die but found a reason to live. She raised Hope as her own daughter, and the child grew up knowing nothing but love and protection. They moved far from that desert town, to a place where no one asked questions about a woman and her baby. Years later, when Hope was old enough to understand, Magnolia told her the truth about how they found each other in the desert. Hope wept for the sister she never knew, and the mother who had sacrificed everything to save her. But she also understood that sometimes families are made not by blood, but by choice and love. Rosalie disappeared into the desert and was never seen again. Some say she started a new life in a distant town. Others believe the desert claimed her. But Magnolia always believed that somewhere, somehow, Rosalie found the peace that had been stolen from her. As for Mr. Thorne and his debts, the desert has a way of settling all accounts in the end. Now click on the video on the screen to hear a story even better than this one, with a twist so powerful you won't forget it anytime soon. Click on the video now.